Steve Beam has done it again. Of course, the name Steve Beam is well known to magicians for his easy-to-do card trick series. His name is well known, isn't it? This time, Steve has a book for those who have graduated from card college. The book is Smokers, and according to the prof, until we develop a way to add bacon flavor or sausage gravy, card tricks just don't get any better. Let's look into this book and see if he's right. Before we get too far into this, let's meet our esteemed professor. Steve Beam is the dean of easy-to-do card magic. He's written 12 semi-automatic card trick series books, as well as a comprehensive index. He promised us that number 12 was the last. We've heard that type of thing before, haven't we? These semi-automatic card trick books are not just for the beginner. I learn from them constantly, but they do offer a lot of value to the fledgling card magician. Smokers and the semi-automatic card trick series do share some similarities, but there are some differences as well, and we'll talk more on the differences in a minute. In Steve Beam's books, stacks and subtleties are favored over hardcore sleight of hand. Although Steve not only has the chops, he designed this material to be fooling to magicians. In fact, he says that Smokers and the aforementioned series are there to fool magicians because if you can fool magicians, then the lay audience comes along for free, especially when it's paired with humor and an entertaining presentation. Regardless of the books that we're talking about, Steve Beam has primarily one point of distribution now, and that is his website, stevebeam.com. I will drop a link down in the description. So if you want this book or any of his other material, you'll have to get it from the man himself. Steve tells you right in the book that he authors books that he would enjoy reading to learn things he didn't know about topics that interest him. You can feel it when you're reading it. You're going to learn about things you didn't know about topics that interest you if you're interested in card magic. This book started its life as the unlucky number 13 in the semi-automatic card trick series. However, as Steve started to accumulate material, one topic kept evolving and growing until he had basically a full book. So it became its own book. The key difference between Smokers and the semi-automatic series is that unlike the semi-automatic series, which is mostly trick, sleight, yes, it has plenty of great material, tricks. There are sleights that you'll learn that you can apply outside of this book, but this book was written intentionally more as a textbook than your typical Steve Beam magic book. The layout is certainly more academic. At the beginning of the book, you're going to learn how the principle works, get some variations, and even understand some history behind where it came from and how it was iterated before you get into the final section that takes you into the tricks. But don't let the talk about it being a textbook or academic scare you. As you can tell by the cover and by the author's name, Steve Beam, it is a ton of fun to read. In fact, you're going to have to be careful reading this book in public because you will be likely to laugh out loud at some of the jokes or puns that are contained in its pages. This episode of Erudite Magic is being brought to you by Don's Magic and Books. I absolutely love reading all of the comments that everyone's making about how much value they're getting out of shopping with Don. He has the discount code that he's offering again this week where you could get 10% off of everything on the website if you enter the code Erudite at checkout. You'll qualify for free shipping if you order $20 or more of media items in the United States. And if you're one of the international Erudite magicians, then you can use shipit2.com to find out how much actual shipping cost will be to you. Don is continuously updating his website because he's got new things coming in. And of course, you guys are buying a ton of books and they're flying off the shelves. So be sure to check his website regularly to see if there's one of those out-of-print beauties that you've been searching for a while. The website is donsmagicandbooks.com, and there will be some links down in the description below, as well as a reminder of that discount code Erudite so that you can begin to save 10% off of books, tricks, DVDs, props, whatever's out there. Back to the review. The book is hardcover with a dust jacket. The dust jacket matches the actual cover of the book, and it's about 180 pages. There is a full index in the back, and the illustrations are done in color. So what does the book actually cover? It's mostly talking about an older principle in magic called the 14-15 principle and the related stacks that go with that. According to Steve, the principle is over 100 years old, but it's been reinvented time and time again, typically with the same boring old application, but you don't have to worry about that. Here, Steve has given you dozens of applications, and he's intentionally avoided the most obvious applications for the principle or the stack. This time, Professor Beam has written the definitive work on the subject with plenty of applications for all. So what is the principle and stack, and what can you do with the knowledge that you gain from this postgraduate course in magic? The simplest explanation of this principle is that you can allow a free cut into a pack of cards, and the 2 cards cut to will total either 14 or 15. Man, that sounds really underwhelming when you say it that way, doesn't it? You might be slightly disappointed by that revelation, but trust me when I tell you that there's so much more that can be done with this. Let's look at a few examples of what you can do with the principle and its related stacks. Of course, one of the more obvious applications is book tests, and I believe Annemann has quite a bit of work on that, as well as subsequent creators who reinvented what Annemann and others before him had already determined was possible. You can predict numbers, whether you're doing it with a pack of cards or just actually predicting the number. There are items with watches and clocks. There are versions of a type of ACAN where a participant is able to freely choose a card and cut off cards, and people are choosing numbers, and it ends up that you find the card at the number chosen by your participants. So it's pretty cool stuff. Those are just some of the basics of the principle, though. The real benefit to this book is learning from a master like Steve Beam, who's going to give you entertaining ways to present this principle and stack. This book could have been even thicker than it is if Steve had decided to just share with you all of the obvious ways that you could reveal the information that this principle gives to you. But Steve took the high road, and he's really only sharing the most clever and entertaining things that he could come up with using this type of magic. He's given you full presentations laced with humor and ready to roll. And the beauty of this material is that a lot of it won't require you to remember a whole lot. Once you get this set up, and by the way, it can be done from a new deck in under 20 seconds. Once you get everything set up, most of the tricks pretty much work themselves. The stack that Steve promotes within the book, though, has other advantages. For example, if you just use the simplest stack that he teaches, and there are several that he gives you, it is cyclical, meaning that you can cut the deck repeatedly without worrying about messing anything up. It is a mirror or stay stack, which means that the top and bottom cards are mates of each other. The second from the top and second from the bottom cards are mates of each other, etc., etc., etc. There's already a lot in the literature using a mirror or stay stack, so if you know some of those tricks, you can whip out a new pack of bikes, get everything into the 14-15 stack within 20 seconds, and then destroy them with one of the clever pieces you're going to learn in this book. And if you know something using a mirror or stay stack, when you're done, you can launch into some other trick from some other book that you might already know. Obviously, with a stack like this, you're also set for a red-black Gilbreth type principle, and you could quickly get into a red-black divided deck, etc. There's just so many applications, and this is just the simplest stack that he teaches. However, it isn't all stack work. There are quite a number of sleights that he teaches, or forces, that can be used from a shuffled deck in use. One such force, called Air Force 1, is going immediately into my act. And he teaches you some really cool tricks that you can use it with that are from a shuffled deck in use. They actually have nothing to do with the 14-15 principle or stack. They're just tangential ideas that he wanted to share because they came about through this thinking process. All of the tricks and applications are fun. There are items with padlocks, checks that get filled out by your participant for any amount and then turn into an amount of cash. Some really cool multi-deck ACAN type routines. A human scale weighing type routine where cards are cut into your hand. You know how many there are. You offer to repeat it. You know not only how many there are, but how many are red, how many are black, culminating in how many pips there are in the stack of cards they cut off in your hand. There are a couple of really fun magical jokes taught, and Steve even gives you a gimmicked or gaffed card that you couldn't get normally to fulfill that magic trick gag. There's also a really funny, if not slightly off-color prediction effect towards the end that made me laugh out loud. These are just a few examples, but I wanted to share it with you so that you know that the material in this book isn't just a bunch of add up a number type effects. There's a ton of fun, magic, and entertainment packed into these pages. That being said, I already mentioned that the book is slightly more academic than most other Steve Beam books. If you've read some Stuart James, it is slightly reminiscent of the way Stuart James would tackle a topic and just cover it every possible use of the principle. And in fact, he did explore this 14 or 15 principle, so Steve quotes him and has some interesting history on his developments and additions to this type of magic. It's still really fun to read. You're just going to get a lot more history and the hows and whys of some of the way this magic works, which I think is always good to know. If you don't like those parts, well, you can just skip them. This book is good if you like a thorough yet entertaining understanding of your Magic. Cost-wise, this book is $45 and you can get it from only one source of which I'm aware, that is stevebeam.com. These days, $45 sounds pretty inexpensive for a book of this caliber. It's a hardcover book, it's not just black and white, it's a ton of fun to read, there's something in there for everyone. Basically, if you are a close-up card performer, you're almost certain to walk away with something that you can use, whether it is a direct application of the 14-15 principle, or if it's one of those sleights or forces that he teaches that you might find other ways to implement in your current card repertoire. You won't have to study this material for super long to be performing it. Within a couple of days of having the book, reading through it, doing things with cards in hand, you'll be able to perform this material. And if you can do a Pharaoh, then you can set this up quickly from new deck order and be ready to go anywhere. But obviously, if you're still working on your Pharaoh or are not comfortable performing it in front of your audience, then you could just have the deck set up and ready to go, or perform one of the many switches that are out there. I'll echo what the author says at the end of the introduction, which was satisfaction guaranteed or your money wasted. If you're interested in learning more about Steve Beam's material, please be sure to check out the video I did a while back on his semi-automatic card trick series. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.